Hi guys, so this is a very short video and totally not what I planned, but life happened. So I was going to talk about New Ageism and Christianity, but I think we'll leave that because it's quite interesting for another video. Today, I just want to shed a little light on, I think, the musings of my heart, and what the early Christians would have been thinking during their time. During their time, the Romans were the ones dominating and ruling over them, ruling them. They were under the siege of the Romans. And in that space, they still had to live their lives. They still had to be Christians. They still had to follow the path that Jesus had set. Now, before I even go into that, I was thinking it only made sense that these people felt that the Messiah was really going to be a political leader. Because if you read through the Old Testament and the prophets that spoke in those days, you would see how most of the descriptions that came with their prophecies painted the Messiah as though he was going to be a political leader that would liberate them from their sufferings and their sorrows. Beknownst to them, the leadership qualities that were attached to the Messiah was not a leader that had an earthly kingdom. This was a leader that had an eternal kingdom, a kingdom not made with hands to rule. And this leader was not one that would just liberate people just like that. He was going to tackle the root of the issue. He was not just going to, cut off the branch or cut off the leaf without tackling the root of the issue, right? So I definitely can imagine what they felt when they saw Jesus and certain things that they said, because they felt that Jesus was going to be the one to liberate them and bring them out of the hands of the Romans. Now, fast forward to when Jesus had died, which I'm sure it crushed them entirely, because this was the man that we thought that was going to save us from these guys. And all of a sudden he's dying. How can a Messiah die? We were told, if not for anything, that this Messiah was going to liberate us and live, and now he's dying. But yeah, we're glad that we have the one who defeated death and he rose up from the dead. And then I began thinking that fast forward to post-resurrection, that awakening would have sponsored how they lived their life. I think it would have changed their perspective about life, about how they saw things, about how this world is really not our own. And I think it's something that we need to discuss very well, especially from that place in Hebrews that talks about how people of old, they treaded on a path because they were looking for a kingdom whose builder and foundation is God. I think that's a very, very very scripture for us to dwell on. If we remove our gaze from the earth, if we remove our gaze from earthly things, I think it changes our perspective on how we should see things, on how we should approach things, and on how we should deal with issues. So yeah, just give it a thought. We'll talk about it progressively as we go on. Bye.